Now abide these three: faith, hope, love. The greatest of these is love. But if you read that verse there in 1 Corinthians 13, the first of these is faith. Well, we're talking about James chapter 1, the book of James. It's always been interesting to me that when I studied the book of James, I realized the book of James, as God, the author of the Bible, put it in the Bible, follows the book of Hebrews. Now, the book of Hebrews is the book of faith. You could call it the faith book. I know we have Facebook, but this is the faith book. The whole book is about believing God and what it means to believe Jesus. Jesus is the author and the finisher of our faith. Because of the unbelief of the nation of Israel, they ended up wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Because of their unbelief, their lack of faith, they could not enter into their rest. Hebrews chapter 11 is the faith chapter. It's the chapter that has God's hall of fame of faith. People who had faith, who believed God. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. That's in Hebrews 11. So faith is the first thing that we need to have. Now what James does as it follows the book of Hebrews tells us about faith, what faith does and what faith accomplishes. But the book of James is the practical book, the book of wisdom that teaches us how to exercise our faith. And as you study through the book of James, you're going to see this subject of faith jumping up over and over again. It's so impossible to please God, to know how to walk by faith without understanding God's wisdom plan for our lives. And so that's why James begins this book with knowing this: the trying of your faith produces patience. Remember? Count it all joy. What is God doing? God is trying your faith. He's testing your faith. He wants your faith to build, and a product of faith, I'm telling you, a result of believing God with confidence that He's going to take everything into consideration and help you through today's trials and tribulations, is the fact that you will have patience, confident, waiting on God. Now, if you need wisdom, in verse 5, he says you must ask in faith. Now he says if you need wisdom, ask God. Oh, very simple, ask God. But he says in the very next verse, in verse 6, but let him ask in faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man and unstable in all his ways. Now, there's so much packed into these verses right here about wisdom and then asking in faith. And we're going to talk about that for probably a couple days. But what is faith? Faith is simply believing God. Faith is the ability to see God in your circumstances. And that is what wisdom is. Now, it's okay to ask for anything from God. I guess it is, in the sense that God is our Father, and we can be so simple, and we should be when we come to Him. We ask for strength, we ask for grace, we ask for things because we feel like we need them. But when we begin to live that life of faith, believing God, knowing that He's in charge, what real faith is being able to see life from God's perspective, seeing God, the evidence of God at work in the situation. And so if you lack wisdom, you're dealing with some tough decisions, some tough challenges in your life right now. You're wondering, what's next? What do I do next? Where do I go next? Ask God for wisdom, but ask in faith. That's the condition. Ask in faith. And then we're going to talk about tomorrow what that actually means to be a double-minded man and be unstable in all your ways. And that's a person that goes one way one day, goes the other way the next day. He's up, down, all around, and who knows where he's going next, unstable. Well, anyway, today, learn to ask in faith, believing God, and we'll talk about how to have that kind of faith. Well, God bless you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.